Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where we continue the mission of highlighting veterans and service organizations who continue to serve our community and our nation. We're brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy. Welcome aboard. Hey, what a great day we've got, and we've got a tremendous program. Everybody loves their pets. Everybody loves dogs. So before we get into that, I want to do a very special thank you to Nathaniel. You do a great job of doing the engineering with the Sin podcast. You want people to know how to do a great job? Take a look at the Sin podcast. And my beautiful wife, Diane, and Chuck, you're always being able to introduce them. So I thought I would go on the script today and do what you've done.
Go for it.
and
we have scripts here.
and the guy who really got me started doing this, and I'm so indebted to, is Chuck Wright, U.S. Marine, helicopter pilot, great friend, Texas Veterans Commission, all of the things you do, Marine Corps League, Toys for Tots, and you even bring pacifiers to us sailors to help us out.
Well, I got to do something to say thank you for the crayons that you brought to me.
If it hadn't been for ice cream, you guys have been in bad shape because the carriers always had it. Hey, I'm Navy veteran, and today we've got a really special Navy veteran. I want to introduce to you Chief Petty Officer Benito Olsen. Benito, better known as Chief Benny, welcome aboard, buddy. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Benny, when we looked up on your website and you were a friend of our Clint Bruce and he gave us your name, I began to say, okay, how does this fit in? And it really fits in because so many people love their pets. Please tell us a little bit about what is Patriot Dog Training and what do you do?
Yeah, so Patriot Dog Training is obviously a dog training business that I started when I got out of the military. And we train dogs all over the United States. Although we are based down here in San Antonio and Dallas, we get dogs from all over the U.S. So it's from anybody's your everyday pet all the way up to pro athletes.
That's fantastic. So if I've got a puppy or I've got a dog that is a rescue dog like you've had, Chuck.
All of our dogs have been rescue dogs.
Yeah, and they've been pretty beautiful. Then you can get some help with Benny's company, Patriot Dog Training, to try and help you out, correct?
Well, not just help. Benny, talk about the importance of training, because I mentioned I had a couple of rescue Aussies, and they had been trained a little bit, and I'm regretting now we didn't get them trained a little bit more. But talk about the importance of that, what you've done, your approach to dealing with animals.
Right. Well, because dogs communicate very differently than humans, a lot of the times what I see is there's just a miscommunication, which ultimately breaks down the relationship between you and your dog. It leads to a lot of frustration on the owner's part. And what we try to do is step in, train the dog, and then train you as the owner and bring you both back together and marry you up so that you're not frustrated. Again, a lot of the times the reason why these dogs end up in rescue shelters is because of lack of communication.
It's interesting that you would talk about communication. Help me understand, because I'm not quite sure I understand when you say communicate with the dog. They can't talk. So how are you communicating?
Yeah, so typically when we train dogs, we're using marker training is what we use. So people will use clickers or they'll use a special word. So we'll take the dog in and we'll start off by marking good behaviors. And so that communicates to the dog, hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, and you're doing it right. And in particular, I take a lot of the skills that I learned in the military, training really high-end military dogs, and I incorporate that into the training with the people's pets. Obviously, we're not training dogs to sniff for explosives or sniff or find people, but training is training at the end of the day. It just depends on what you're training that dog, what task you're training that dog to do.
Before we went on the air, we were talking about a story, and you didn't get to complete it, about the wild child in the military that you worked with that was unruly and unhandleable in what you did. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds like a fun story.
Yeah. So in my book, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit, Digo was a dog that I was assigned to while I was with SEAL Team 6. So I was a master at arms. I was basically a military police officer for anybody that's watching. I was selected as their dog handler. And I was initially paired with this dog because this dog, when he would go out on missions, he was not only going and finding and biting the bad guy, but he was having issues biting the good guys as well because he would just get so excited. Yeah, little blue on blue. But I ended up being his handler. They looked up to me as a skilled handler, and so I was able to take Digo and really focus him on doing the right thing. So not biting us and really focusing his energy on finding the bad guy and only biting the bad guy. He was actually one of the reasons why I got blown up because we were such a good team that they had chosen to take us out on a certain mission one night when there was only when they could only take one dog with them. So they ultimately chose us, and it's because of Digo's success. The reason why I'm ultimately writing. I wrote a book and why I'm here today.
Did you use the marker training to basically change his behavior?
In a way, so Digo would get really amped up and he'd be in such high drive that, say going into a house, he was just kind of like a crazed animal. And what I would do is I would wait for him to calm down. And then I would give him the verbal cue that he's allowed to go in now and go search and go find, because biting for a dog, especially a dog of his caliber, is everything. Prey drive and that hunt drive to go and find somebody. They get so much out of it, and then when they're on somebody, the people's even if it's a decoy, they're flailing around. They're making it really fun for the dog, and that type of energy is what fed Digo's issues. Only I was able again to kind of just get him to cap. So like shaking up a bottle, right? Like a Coke bottle, and you build up that pressure. But once you take the lid off, it pops, right?
Yeah.
So that's what that's what I did with a dog. So yeah.
Excuse me.
Sorry about that. We had we're messing around behind the scenes here.
Well, I've got allergies, and sometimes it fouls things up.
Yeah.
At least I'm not
Right.
allergic to Great Dane. Now, what kind of dog was this that you worked with? Was it
So
Malinois?
Digo was So Digo was a Belgian Malinois. He was actually the guy who had selected him before I had actually showed up at the command. When he saw him walk on the field, Digo just strutted like he was the little badass, right? If I can say that on here. I mean, he did when he walked out on the field, and he didn't care. Like the guy told me that the trainer that selected him was like, when he got on the bite, he just would not let go. I mean, he was just a fierce animal. And so Digo was a Belgian Malinois. And I got off track. We typically had Belgian Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, and then every once in a while we'd get a Belgian Malinois, German Shepherd mix. And what they would do over there is try to combine the best of both worlds. And it was, mainly male dogs. We'd have a couple females, a couple very select females that were just truly remarkable dogs. But for the most part, they were male dogs.
Is the dog handling, is the dog that big of an integral part of your SEAL team? Like you talked about SEAL Team 6, everybody knows about SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
And you were the dog handler. The dog then must have been an integral part.
It was, and as coming in as an outsider, because I wasn't a SEAL, it was even a little bit more, because those guys are awesome. I mean, they are great at what they do, and when you're trying to kind of step in there and take away a little bit of their fun, getting them to understand that the dog, how important it was, and they quickly saw. Digo, later on if we have time, we can talk about a mission like Digo. Saved us multiple times. I mean, the dog's nose is 10,000 times better than ours, and it really. I think after certain missions with me, anyways, they learned to trust me and the dog, even though I wasn't a Navy SEAL.
Well, you look like you could have been one.
Oh no! And that's the funny thing, though, is I didn't go in the Navy to go do any of this. I went in the Navy to go be a police officer, and I ultimately found my way working with these dogs over in Bahrain, and then ultimately being selected to go and serve with those guys. So it was a great honor.
I can only imagine. And a lot of people don't realize all of the different kinds of jobs. I mean, you don't think about going into the military and be a dog handler. That's
No.
an important job.
Yeah, still is to this day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They've still got that going on.
I have one question. We're talking about the dog situation. Are dogs that are retiring military dogs like Diego or Diego? What is
Diego.
got the Diego? Is
Yes.
Diego a good dog to then take in to be a family pet? Can they be?
So I had two young. Well, it depends on the dog, right? So Diego was still, even though like Diego bit me a couple times, right? Like he never bit anybody else, but he bit me because he was so excited. Like he would just redirect, right? So he was not the type of dog that was good enough to go to a family. And I'll throw Mike Ritland, Warrior Dog Foundation. He took in Diego because Diego could not be adopted out to a family. Diego ultimately went to, I don't know if it was like a couple, like they didn't have any kids. Diego died on somebody's couch chewing on a Kong. So he lived out a good life. But being around kids, I had to pass on him because I had two young children at the time. And there's just no way that I'm going to put that little hellion with my children, just because he was just so, I don't want to say unpredictable, but I could predict what he was going to do, but other people couldn't. So ultimately, he went
Obviously
with the organization.
a high energy animal.
Yes.
Chief, tell us, you said he was chewing on a Kong before some of our audience who doesn't know what a Kong is. Explain what that is.
So a Kong, actually, the story, if you get time, go look up the story on a Kong. I mean, it's made out of rubber, right? Like the guy invented it. He saw his dog chewing on a piece of rubber that was on a vehicle. And this guy has made, I don't know how much money he's made, but anyways, it's a little rubber toy that you can shove peanut butter and everything else in, freeze it, let your dog chew on it, and they really don't ever break. Yeah, there you go. Very nice.
Hey, yeah, that's
lots of Kongs.
Lots of choices.
We've had a Kong,
definitely.
and amazing how much dogs love peanut butter.
Oh yeah.
Very quickly too, you mentioned two types of dogs that are predominantly used in the military, and that's the German Shepherd and the Malinois. They're very closely related. What is some of the difference between the temperaments of the two animals?
So Malinois, I've only met a couple lazy Malinois, right? Like they've always been just very high drive, high energy. A dog of another handler, the dog was shot and was still trying to go bite the bad guy. I mean, that was a Malinois, right? And I've seen some shepherds, and this is no offense to anybody who owns a shepherd, but I've seen shepherds like, twist their foot a little bit and they're rolling over like they're dying. But I have seen
we had Marines like that.
I've seen some shepherds though that had the drive of a Malinois, but for the most part, with the SEAL team I was with, we had Dutch shepherds, Malinois. I think we only had a couple of German shepherds, but the military in general has shepherds, Malinois. They have labs. I mean, I think they still have beagles that go on the submarines and search and whatnot. So it's military has a wide variety of dogs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So one of the things that I'd like to do, as we are in what I call Carry the Load month, and you'd mentioned Clint Bruce, who founded Carry the Load.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll ask our listeners, and we're gonna take a break here in a second. We come back from the break. I wanted to spend just a minute talking about the flag that is behind you, because that was an integral part of Clint Bruce's motivation to create Carry the Load. And we'll talk a little bit about what Carry the Load is before we get back on track, because I got about 4 questions I want to ask you, and we may not have enough time for all of that.
Well, I think we got a good segment coming up that we're not only going to do that, but we're going to just have so much fun talking to Chief Benny about taking care of animals. I think everybody loves to have a pet, an animal, whether it's a dog or a cat. I've had horses as well. You got to learn how to work with the animal. And here's Benny talking about Patriot dog training. That's probably the most predominant pet in the country. So when we come right back, we're going to be talking with Chief Benny Olsen, and he's talking about Patriot dog training. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show.
I can't read
And
it.
thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Chuck, you were talking about carry the load, and you're talking about that outstanding looking flag right behind Benny. Take that thought and go forward.
Well, it was very obvious very quickly, and I do know the story behind it, and it's an incredible story. They built a movie out of it, all kinds of stuff. But the thing, and I'm trying not to get choked up because to this day I still do. But Carry the Load was founded by, as we mentioned, Clint Bruce, who is definitely a friend of the show, former Navy SEAL, former NFL football player. So an interesting man himself. But that was part of how the show was founded. But Chief, it's clear that you're trying to honor your fallen brothers as well. Talk a little bit about the flag and the significance of it as we are in Memorial Day month.
Right. So anything that I've done in my business, I've made sure to make the guys that I've served with, the fallen men and women and dogs, a forefront. So when people walk in here, they walk right by this flag that's sitting right behind me, or even in my other location, they walk right by pictures of men that, ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice. And right behind me, Long Live the Brotherhood, that's dedicated to 2 Troop of Extortion 17, August 6, 2011. They were going out chasing after squirters, people that were running from a target, is what we called them. We called them squirters. And they were going after these guys. They were getting ready to come into land, and a single RPG hit I think the rear rotor, and they ended up all dying. And guys that I had served with for, again, I can't say that a lot of them were Navy SEALs. I knew them very well. I did not, go to buds or do any of that with them, but served with them for 4 years leading up to that. And then John Duandara, who was the dog handler, the master at arms dog handler, him and his dog Bart, who they ultimately found, him holding the dog when we went to go and kind of pack up their gear and stuff. And so I have it behind me, just because I want your listeners and your viewers to kind of just, if they get a chance, go look up Extortion 17 if they've never heard of it. It's a really sad moment in our history, over in Afghanistan. And yeah.
Is that one of the reasons why you wrote the book? Is that included in your book?
It's in the book. I think it's part of the reason why I decided to get out of the military, that having to pack up all of their belongings and everything over there to send back to their families, and then go through some of the helicopter remains and whatnot. It was just a very difficult time. And like I said, I was blown up. I shattered both my femurs. I was able to get through that, no problem. But that was just a whole different level of, I just, you just never expected something like that to happen, and to lose that many people.
Yeah, that many at one time must have been just an incredible pull on the heartstrings. And
oh yeah,
I get it. We're all macho. We don't want to admit, but those feelings are deep and powerful. We threw up the book Underdogs. Let's talk about that for just a minute. Conquering life with man's best friend and a SEAL team. And we don't all have SEAL teams to fall back on, but most of us do have dogs. So talk about your motivation for the book, what you want readers to get out of the book.
Yeah, so Kurt Warner did that American Underdog, so I was kind of like, oh dang it, he already did it. But I've been working on this book since 2013, and the more I told my story to people, the more ultimately other people were like, man, that'd be a really great book. So the Underdogs is not just about me recovering in the military. I grew up. I had a mother that was a single mother. My dad went to prison when I was a kid. So right there, society writes people off, at a very young age.
Right.
And I was able to work through that, ultimately joined the military. I got blown up, went through that. And then, so like kind of my whole life has been the underdog story, right? And getting out and starting this business, it's just been and then Digo was an underdog as well. So.
Benny, what that doesn't kill us makes us stronger. We go through these things to become stronger. And as a result of what you went through, you've written a great book, The Underdogs. I can't wait to read it. I just found out about it. And we want our listeners to know The Underdogs. Now, where can they get that? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, so it's not on Amazon yet because it's still going through DoD approval. So it's on BallasBooks.com, or you can go to PatriotDogTraining.com and you can find the link there.
All right, we're going to be right back in just a minute talking with Chief Benny Olsen. Underdog? No, not really.
Smooth.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Benny, I'm a certified senior advisor. I work with the elderly. And one of the things that I'm sitting here in my mind is just reeling. I go into a lot of homes and they've got a yappy barking dog that's just a real pain in the butt. But having a dog helps people so much. Be calm and I would say, wait a minute, you need to get with somebody like Benny and his company, Patriot Dog Training, and get that dog to where it's a better partner. It's a better member of your family, rather than, biting ankles and being a yappy, crappy dog.
You said crappy on the air.
We can do that. It's podcast. So, Chief, we obviously have a lot of behind the scenes humor that's only funny to us. But let's talk about that, because we've been talking about dogs on the high end.
Right.
And I think you brought up some good points about the energy of certain breeds of dog just doesn't fit to be a family pet. But talk about, as you go through the entire spectrum, because I'm sure you train all kinds of dogs, talk a little bit about how you kind of would recommend certain breeds of dogs for people looking for certain things. Talk a little bit about your service dog program. We're turning the show over to you, which is not to say we're turning the show over to the dogs. I know. I bet you are so tired of that joke.
No, not at all. So selecting a dog, right? I think everybody has their own. People see the movies and the TV shows, and they think these dogs are really cool, and they are really cool under the right circumstances, the right family, right? But you really have to look at your lifestyle and see what works for you, right? These Malinois that we were talking about, Dutch Shepherds, I mean, they're like little Ferraris. They like to bite and shake things, and they have a lot of energy. And for somebody that is not, wanting to do a lot with their dog, and they want a dog to just lay down and chill, that's probably not the right dog. On that same note, I would tell somebody, hey, go look at a lab. But I've seen labs come out and they're like little crackheads too. I mean, they're just all over the place. So it really, unless you're going to a shelter, even if you go to a shelter, right? Like, because you never know what that dog's going to be like in 5 days after you take it home. But finding an older dog that you can already kind of see some of those behaviors and motivation and stuff like that coming out of the dog, you get a puppy, it's like a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get, and so I used to be able to say, hey, if you want this type of dog, go get this breed. But it's not always the case anymore. I mean, I can't tell you how many dogs historically, I would say are kind of more lazy. Like some of these labs are now just, especially silver labs. They got silver labs now, and the silver labs, they're just a lot of energy, and people are like, I didn't even know what I was getting into. They thought it was just a lab. So
Right.
Labs like what kind of dog do you guys have? I mean, you obviously chose it.
We've got Australian Shepherds. We've got Blue Merles. Well, we only have one of them now. We lost Tessie, but And it was funny because you expect Aussies, excuse me. You got me labs on the brain. Expect Aussies to be really high energy.
Right.
And we got a couple of them that are couch potatoes.
Really?
They are hilarious. And incredible personality. We absolutely lucked into it, but as I'm sitting here thinking, it's like we've violated every rule you talked about selecting a dog,
Right.
and we just got lucky.
Right.
And I do think there's part of that as the dogs respond to us, and God forbid, does that make me a couch potato?
I'm not going there. I'm not going there.
Yeah.
My first dog was a rescue dog that we found at SMU when I was in college, and I took him to vets, and he looked like a German Shepherd, but the vets said he's a little bit smaller, and I think he's a cross between a Malinois or a Belgian Shepherd and a German Shepherd.
Sure.
That dog we took him out to the ranch one time, and he started herding the cattle, and they got real unhappy with him and circled him, and I had to go get him out of that before they had a problem with him. But he also could climb. God, there wasn't a fence that he couldn't get over. And I've seen that in videos of Malinois that they go over brick walls, they go over fences. Super high energy working dogs don't necessarily work in a family. If you don't have time to work with them and train them, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I took care of a beautiful golden retriever one time. Oh, that was a sweetheart. I mean, she was not only a couch potato, but a snuggle bug. And that was the perfect dog for me at that time.
Right. So and that's what I tell people: golden retrievers, golden doodles, like those types of dogs are, almost. I've not had a bad one come through.
So the range of dogs. Talk a little bit about the range of dogs you work with, and a little bit about how potentially you work with one breed differently than another, and talk a little bit about what you do every day to create dogs that help them better become man's best friend.
Yeah. So we work anywhere from let's see here, Chihuahuas, all the way up to Borbals, Mastiffs, 150, 200-pound dogs. Whoa. And the way I go about training dogs, I'm very impartial. I don't treat one dog different than the other. I train dogs using their dog food. I don't use any special treats. I make the dogs come out and work for their dog food. Most dogs at home, not most, but I'd say the majority that come in, they're free fed. So people leave food out all the time. And so when I take away that food that they've normally had all the time, I create now motivation. I create hunger in the dog's stomach, and I actually make them work for it. Because if they are so excited about that food bowl all the time, if I can make them excited about you as much as they are about that clanging of the food bowl, then we got something. Then we got a real relationship with the dog and the owner. Most of the time, the dog has a relationship with the food bowl, right? Because that's the most important part of their lives. Yeah.
Wow, that's good to know.
Yeah, Cooper loves me because I'm the one who normally feeds him.
Right.
But Cooper's, and I was thinking about that. We don't leave food out all the time, but part of that is Cooper seldom walks away from the dish with it anything but empty. Right. So, but
I think also what you feed your pet, how you take care of your pet. Man, I have seen some dogs that were cowed, had obviously been beaten, and
I hate that.
Excuse me. The most interesting dog that I ever encountered was a lady across the street had a wolf. That dog was, I think, about 95, 98% great gray wolf, and the other 5% was husky. That dog was amazing, and I remember taking that dog for a walk on Swiss Avenue, and other dog owners would be walking their dogs, and their dogs would see magic, and they did everything they could to get away from that wolf. I mean, there was something about that animal, and while Magic was very, very quiet, man, I would never recommend a family having a dog like that. There's too much wildness in them.
Do you understand that a wolf is not a dog? It's a wild animal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen some things on TV about wolf rescue and wolf sanctuaries that's a kind of dog that really should be left alone, in my opinion. 'Cause
Well,
I've
and I
handled
think,
one.
yeah, and I think you might have had a hybrid. I've seen some of those come through, and those can be difficult to train. But you talked about that dog walking down the street and no other dogs wanting to mess with it and whatnot. I think some dogs, just like humans, they put off this aura or sense about them. Like Digo, when I'd take him overseas, all the other dogs they would try to come up and mess with him, but then it was like parting of the seas almost. You know, they would kind of just let him walk through like he wasn't one of them, right? He was something special, and that's the way he carried himself. So, yeah,
That energy level.
yeah,
That's interesting. How many people they'll go buy a pet and they really don't know what they got? I mean, you were alluding to that earlier.
yeah. They you know, a lot of them do it, and I think that's why I'm in business, right? You know, it works out for me. Um, they go spend, you know, thousands of dollars on a purebred. I get people that have spent thousands of dollars on a purebred dog, but they'll balk at, you know, a month of training. And I'm like, hey, if you would have just went and got yourself a nice rescue dog, I have no problem with people going to breeders, right? Like a legitimate breeder. I have a shepherd who's 15 years old. Um, you know, still to this day, crazy about her ball, even though her hips are going out and she's having strokes and stuff like that. But still to this day has that drive, right? But I went and I was like, I want this type of dog because of the stuff that I'm doing. But easily going to a rescue and you know, paying a few $100 for a rescue dog, that's still a really nice dog.
Yeah, really great dog. Jim, you brought up something, and Benito, would you drive into it a little bit? Cooper has recently had problems, has been diagnosed with kidney problems, which again,
Sure.
for an Aussie, that's 12, 13 years old, not unusual.
Yeah.
But we've put him on the vet recommended a more expensive dog food. And it was interesting because as soon as we opened up the bag, we could literally smell the difference. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about feeding of animals and the long-term care of animals that way.
Yeah. So I didn't grow up with dogs. They were all, you know, my family kind of came and visited, and then the dog would get lost, and they would become our dog. So growing up, like my grandparents and whatnot, I mean, they're feeding old Roy. I think that's still even around, like just some really crap dog food.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that you have to go and feed the most expensive stuff
Right.
because that's certainly not the greatest. I've also fed raw dog food that you get in logs that is made specifically for dogs. And you know, definitely the what you feed your dog is just like us, right? Like if I go to McDonald's all the time, you know, I'm not going to be very healthy. It's the same thing with your dogs.
I think that's critically important. Chuck, I wrote down some things that we've talked about before. Let's switch the conversation just a little bit
Sure.
to what got you to decide to have your own business, and how did you get that started?
Yeah. So that's funny. I got medically retired, and I applied to so many jobs, all kinds of jobs. You know, Home Depot, stock shelf, you know, all the way up to like Walmart corporate, you know, fraud, loss prevention stuff. I could not get hired, literally could not get hired. I had a guy down the street. He was a Navy guy. He said, "Hey, you train dogs in the military." He's like, "Can you come over and see what you can do with my dog?" He's, you know, pulling on the leash, stuff like that. I was like, "Oh, sure. Yeah, whatever." I went down the street, and you know, within a couple hours, I had this dog healing on a leash, walking next to me, not pulling, and he gave me $500 to do it, and I didn't want to accept it. I told him to keep, and he's like, "No," he's like, "You literally just helped my life out." And so I started looking into it, and then I found out that the VA had bulk rehab, who would pay for me to go learn more dog training, even though I had all this dog training in the military. So I got to go to a couple civilian schools on the VA's dime. I got to use my GI Bill to go do that. And that's kind of where I started Patriot dog training. I started it in my in-laws' house up in Chicago. I had about 14 dogs in their basement at one point. My in-laws, right? Like, cause we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know where we wanted to live in the country. We were in Virginia, and, that's how I started. And then I came to Texas, and I put crates in my garage. You know, it's a heated and cooled garage. And then now we've got a 10,000 square foot facility down in Bulverde, Texas, and we've got an office up here in Dallas, and then we're looking at acquiring another place in Houston, another existing dog boarding facility.
I'm smiling because I went to high school and college in San Antonio. I know the Bulverde area well. My sister used to live right there, um, right around the corner from Bulverde. So yeah, it's just a. But how'd you get to Texas? How'd you get to San Antonio?
It's funny. We looked at. I told my wife and I we met down in Kingsville, Texas, and when we would come up early, this was early in our years and being in the military, we'd come up to San Antonio to party. Because we were E4s, right? Like that's what you do. And I said San Antonio is pretty nice, and so we heard about a little town called Bernie, Texas.
Yep,
and
Been
that's
there.
we used to play Bernie in football.
Yep.
Back in
And
the day.
and as soon as we drove through there, we fell in love with it. Great area. We bought 5 acres there, and that's where I initially started it all. And I said, hey, we're just going to move there. I got my VA, a little bit of VA money. I don't know how we're going to make this stuff work, but we're going to give it a try, and it's worked out.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
San Antonio is military town USA, and some people will say that about San Diego, and I can make that case. But it's interesting that you were down in Kingsville.
Yeah.
And I say that having gone through Pensacola, and 2 of the alternate training facilities were at Beeville and at Kingsville. So I know South Texas well. It's fond memories for me this morning.
Beautiful, beautiful place. Benny, we're so glad to have you. We're going to be wrapping up the show in the next segment. And so we're excited to talk about this because everybody either has a dog or wants a dog or a cat. And I don't think you can train cats. So
I've got 2 of them. So
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. You're listening to a Veterans Impact Show with Chuck Wright and Jim Blythe. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Hey, guys, let me mention real quick. I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in here, Chuck. To keep the lawyers happy, Facebook, everybody know I work for Fairway Independent Mortgage, and my NMLS number is 311548, and our national one is 2289. So that takes care of that. And if you want to know more about what I do, just look me up on jimblythe.net, and we're here to help you. And if you want to know more about what Chuck does, where do they go to look you up, buddy?
They can find me they can find Lone Star Wealth Strategies on Facebook. I've got a LinkedIn page. I don't use it for business a lot. I guess I'm the world's worst businessman, which is something Benito and I were talking about off the air. Some of the ways to become a better business. But speaking of a better business, Benito, we threw up the website. Let's take the next 60, 120 seconds and wrap up this part of the show talking about what you do, how you do it, and how people connect with you.
Yep. So as I said, I own Patriot Dog Training. So right there, patriotdogtraining.com. We train anywhere from, small dogs all the way up to, mastiff sized dogs. We train dogs from all over the country. I've had dogs from California, Florida, all the way up into Minnesota. Your everyday pet, right? Everybody needs a little bit of help, and that's what we're here to do. We're down in San Antonio. It's our primary state-of-the-art facility. And
Outstanding. Now, do you provide or train service dogs as well?
So I leave that up to the nonprofits because there are people out there that'll spend months doing that. What we've done in the past is we've partnered with some nonprofits, just doing some basic obedience for them. The Purple Heart Project is located in Bernie, and we've trained service members like pets for them because people still, while they don't need a service dog, they might need a companion dog or emotional support, something like that. Maybe not a full-on service dog, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's just incredible stuff. We're really glad we've had you on the show. Wait a minute. Yeah, I guess we are. I'm looking at the clock going, we've got more time than we thought, but I guess we don't.
No. Hey, Benny, one of the comments when we first connected with you was, gosh, what can I say in 45 minutes? I think it's been a lot faster than you ever imagined. hasn't it?
Yeah. Normally we run out of time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it is always a common problem. The show goes faster than we want it to. We really appreciate you being on. We're going to let Jim bring this into the dock with a prayer. But who have we got next week? Is next week Terry Burgess?
Yeah, Reads Across America or Carry the Load.
No, we've got 2 guests coming up.
All right, we'll have to. We'll
We're
get
still,
that out.
We're still not reading my my emails. Okay. I think we've got Terry Burgess, who is the author of When Your Blue Star Turns Gold and the Gold Star Family Retreat Project, I think it's called. I should have had that written down.
I should have brought it myself. I apologize. Tell you what, let's do. Let's say a prayer and just a special thank you to men like Benny who have carried the mission forward, who are continuing the mission of service, not only just to the nation through the military, but service to our community.
Yep.
Dear Lord, God in heaven, who made us all, we're so thankful for men like Benny and all they do to continue the mission. We're thankful for our active duty military and our police officers and first responders for all they do to keep us safe. God, protect them, be their armor, and be with them and watch over them. And thank you, God, for veterans like Benny and many more who have continued the mission to raise this country's level of awareness about what veterans can do and are continuing the mission in their communities for a better world. Dear God, we thank you and we pray that you will help us to bring this nation back together. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, dear God. We're so appreciative. This we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Benny, it has been a joy to have you.
Yep.
It's been a great day. People want to know more, go to Patriot Dog Training. They want to contact you, Patriot Dog Training. They want a copy of your book, Patriot Dog Training. I think it's a great place. We're going to be sending people to you who've got those unruly dogs. A little old lady had a dog almost ripped my ankle off. And then I had another one that the German Shepherd was so excited to see me. And let me tell you something, there's nothing like having a wet pant leg. So, guys, it's been a blast. I'm so thankful to be here. Next week, we'll be back with you with a great program. Chuck, thank you for all you do. Benny, thank you for all you do. Diane, Nathaniel, thank you. This has been a Veterans Impact Show, continuing the mission. Thank you for being with us. Join us on Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Be a part of continuing the mission.
Almost perfect. No, this is
Freedom fighter for us all. I won't falter, never